questions that you have, and maybe we can come back to it at the end of the presentation. My name is Dr. Kevin Browning. I am the director for the Center for Professional Development. And this morning, we're just going to talk a little bit about what life is going to look like when we return to the office after the COVID pandemic. I don't think any of us really thought that we'd be this far into it and still working remotely or, kind of hitting back and forth. But there are some challenges that we're going to face when we come back. And so I just wanted to kind of touch base with you guys and give you some tips and practices and things to kind of look out for as we begin to make that transition back. In all honesty, COVID-19, when you look at this particular quote and the saying, it's an extreme test of the necessity of many aspects of our basic daily work routine, both for the current crisis and beyond. And with that being said, COVID-19 has just tested everyone and everybody. No one is immune from this from the way the operational side of things, whether it be at SLCC or at the state level, national level, global level. Everything has been tested. Everything has been challenged. There's been, countless opportunities to reshape organizations and reshape the business cultures. And that's really what's going to take place when we come back from this. Nothing's going to stay the same that when we left it. It will be totally different. And we were forced into this, and it's really the testing of our systems in place, how we responded and what we work for. And when we come back, it's really going to set the tone for our culture and our climate moving forward. So that being said, again, 2020 will be about assessing the readiness and resilience while still maintaining almost no impact, such as hurting the productivity or engagement. And that's really what we've strived for during all of this is, we went to a hybrid model or we went to remote learning, started working from home, communicating with students in different ways and our colleagues. It was truly all about, how can we do this? How can we address this and still provide the services that we say we're going to do, still provide a quality education, still provide that services that our students and faculty and staff need, and as well as our community as we outreach. So we needed to make sure that we're setting things in place. And that's really what this has been all about the last couple of months at SLCC is really evaluating what we will look like moving forward when we're coming out of this. I added this slide just to kind of come back and do a recap real quick with you guys. This is from the Nudge to Shove presentation that I did with the SDI back in April of 2020. And keep in mind today is January 6th. And in March, we got some hints that things were happening early March, that they were going to be suspending all travel, face-to-face meetings, so forth and so on. On the 16th, we were kind of shoved into this situation. So we're really coming up next to close to and nudging up to a year that we've been facing a lot of this and going through a lot of this. And again, this one, if you remember, if you attended the SDI session, this is again another recap slide where I stated as much as possible, keep your routines prior to the telecommuting deployment to avoid bad habits setting in. And I made a point of saying, the season will end at some point and we're going to transition back to our normal SLC environment. Truthfully, again, I don't think any of us thought that we'd be this far into it. If you look at some of what I put at the bottom, habits, 66 days for a new behavior to become an automatic, going through some of those numbers, we really thought maybe at the extreme, it would be at the end of May before we return to the office, where we had about 37 to 58 work days out where some of those habits would establish. But as of today, right now, we're sitting at 206 work days as remote employees. And from all looks of it, we're still going to be able to be in that mode for a little while, whether it's fully remote, transitioning back a little bit at a time, some staff coming back, some floating back and forth. A lot of it hinges on what goes on in the next couple of months with this pandemic and where we end up with that. But just to give you an idea, we thought we were focusing at that time to maintain some stability, some normalcy of what you were doing before. thinking that we'd end fairly soon. Now we've had about 200 days, a little over 200 days to set into some habits and some behaviors. And now we're kind of looking at this in a reverse manner of going from the office situation to a remote work from home, now looking at transitioning back. So we've got some habits and some things we need to look at as we come back. The reality of it is that, we need to come to terms and face that our post-pandemic workplace will hardly look like the one we left behind. Very little will be exactly the same. If you think, any major event challenges the norm of our lives. Some challenges are a little short-term and others are long-term. So I was reading an article and it kind of stuck with me. Let's think about how, 9/11 made an impact on how we live and behave. It has continued on. Certain aspects were immediate and other aspects have continued on. For example, right after the event on 9/11, initially organizations stopped all work travel. Naturally, all travel was suspended just as a whole. But as things began to come back, a lot of organizations just stopped it altogether. As time moved on, although that policy changed, others, such as liquids on the plane, other aspects of things that we used to not have to worry about prior to 9/11 has shaped the way we do in business now. We start looking at things differently for efficiency. For example, now when I travel, and I used to travel with my previous job about every other week, I was on a plane, several planes actually going throughout the country. I really packed my wardrobe and what I was packing for the business trip, a lot of times just to get through security fairly easy, just based on shoes. Now that we have to take shoes off, and that's just become the norm now. So things that are coming through this pandemic for our workplace, there are certain aspects that will go away. Other things will change, will stick with us throughout the entirety of it. So, we just have to kind of remember that there are certain elements that are definitely going to look differently when we return and how we work in the workplace. There are, some immediate things and immediate changes that you can expect upon your return. Some of these we've already seen transition into our lives. There's going to be a digital transformation at all levels, meaning, how we interact, how we have meetings, what all of our social interactions even look like, where, we had Christmas parties now that were virtual, and activities such as that. And let me say this, a lot of this presentation floats from not just from the direct reports or just staff, but it's also looking at leadership, executive levels, managers, directors, and so forth. All of these things we need to kind of look at or take into consideration coming from those viewpoints. A lot of the focus is going to be on outputs versus that actual face time. There's going to be more limited time. Well, come to my office and let's chat about this, or let's do this. It's really going to be examining some of the outputs versus those initial face times that a lot of directors and managers want to see. I think if anything, this pandemic and some of the things that we've gone through has created more of a respect for work-life blends. And that's at all levels that we, as we've shared our challenges, whether it be with elderly parents or children in daycare and schools, whatever that looks like, I think there's become an heightened and enhanced respect for that work-life blend. Also, I think we'll see stronger communication, as we've already seen, but I think that will increase even more, and an increased trust, transparency, and empathy at all levels. I really think that coming out of 2020, coming out of this pandemic, coming out of the work from home and remote, and some of the things that we've had to go through, we've had to trust each other. We've had to be transparent with each other about what we're challenged and what we're faced with and what we can and cannot do. And managers and directors have had to have a trust that their employees are performing and doing and going back to the outcomes versus the face time. So I think that will continue on. There's naturally going to be operational changes that's going to take place. So we need to be ready for some of that, even as we start to swing back into full time. Interactions, we interact with our students and staff. I mean, we've seen that when we talk about hybrid courses and dividing classes when they come on, students into different classes when they come to class and doing the WebEx meetings and so forth. And regardless of what takes place, I think we'll see some more socially distanced offices, classrooms, common areas, and workplace practices. The more this goes on, who knows what, like office get-togethers. And I was watching the news this morning, and they were talking about one of the bakeries was talking about baking king cakes and how Friday is their big day, has typically been their big day for king cakes, because people bring them to the office. I don't really think that's going to happen as much anymore, just because the reality of it is. So I think even that might be some challenges and some hurdles that we're going to have to face, and some realities of our new work environments that we'll need to address. But through all of that, just as the work from home situation took us to different levels and took us through different growth periods, this transition can be a growth moment for you. It's an excellent time to bring in fresh ideas, look at different views, look at different ways to approach things, innovation. What's been done in the past that now that we can change differently, or what was working in the past now has to change due to our new environment and the new situations that we're dealing with. Resilience, just the ability to bounce back. And, I've seen such resilience with the staff and the faculty and even our students through all of this, as we've really kind of worked our way through it and changing on the fly. It's like we start out one way, but then we may have to make these changes depending on what happens in our culture, and being able to address that and move fairly fluidly through all of those processes and different scenarios. So, but also it'll be an excellent ideal time to increase skill sets, as I know many of you have over the last couple of months, as we've started, not a couple of months, several months, numerous months now, increased skill sets such as communication, electronics, technology, things like that. So this is going to be a significant moment for you guys, for all of us, to grow exponentially in our jobs and our skill sets. So many folks have used the term, well, this is the new normal. And that's fine when it first started. That's fine when everything initially rolled out. It was the new normal. As time has gone on, and we've seen that there are going to be more permanent changes, there's going to be more permanent policy changes, procedural changes, operational changes. The new normal is really just transitioning into standard SLC's practices, because the old way of doing things just really will not happen again. There's going to have to be a willingness to update approaches regarding management, employee engagement, satisfaction, and all staff need awareness of that. To be honest with you, or any organizations, whether it's SLCCC or any organization, should not be striving to go back to the way things were, because that's no longer. So we now have to focus on getting our folks up and ramped up to what our new environment will look like. And flexibility is going to be the key in this as we try to figure that all out as we become more ingrained in our local campus. The health crisis right now, if natural, that we're hopeful with the vaccine and some other strides that's being made and things that's happening, that this will end sooner than later, or at least have more control over it. But the reality is right now, the health crisis could last till mid-2021, hopefully not longer, but it's our reality. But the impact, regardless of how long this lasts, on operations and institutional expectations will continue to influence our practices, our office management, our time management, the way that we interact with each other, the way that we communicate with our students and our faculty, our stakeholders within the community. Everything has changed. The previous methods will no longer work, and everything is on the table for review and updates. And the thing is, with this pandemic, what we have to understand is, A, it's impacted everyone in our organization at all levels. A lot of times, if you've ever come from a business background or a business environment where there's been a large organizational shift or change, some levels aren't as impacted as others. But that's not the case here. Every level from executive on down has been impacted. Taking it to the next level, our community has been impacted. Everyone that we engage with, their business practices have changed in the way that they engage with us and we engage with them. Everything has changed, is on the table. And that, as you know, that can go on from outside of our community to state levels and so forth, and community nationwide and globally. Everything at all levels and all organizations have shifted. And we need to kind of rethink our approach to some of that. And the reality is we're going to have to move outside of our comfort zones, and we're moving into some unknown territory in some areas. So we're hopeful to give you some basics today of what to be aware of at all levels, whether you're a manager, or director, an executive team sitting in on this call, faculty, whoever you are, that some of these tips may influence your approaches. Again, the new normal is not a new normal anymore. It is just our practices. Some of the things that were temporary will go back to normal, as we said, but there are a lot of things will become standard business functions as we move on, and the way that we've approached it. I think we're more aware of safety needs, practices, and just that social interaction is going to be different. It's going to look a little bit different. All policy and procedure changes are under consideration. And some of them have advanced a little more quickly based on our current circumstances, while others are looking into more of a longer term future strategies type of thing. But at the end of the day, we're looking at alternative methods for the way that we did business before versus how we will do business moving forward. And both managers and direct reports must put their cards on the table through all of this and act with transparency. There has to be dialogue more now than ever before. And I think, as mentioned in some of those previous slides, I think what we've been through at the work from home, the remote, some of the hybrid courses, dialogue has just skyrocketed, communication has skyrocketed, and there's been more transparency at all levels and saying, I can't deal with this, or I don't know how to deal with this, I need help with this. And just remember that dialogue is a process of genuine interaction through which human beings listen to each other deeply enough to be changed by what they learn. Each makes a serious effort to take others' concerns in their own picture, even when disagreement persists. No participant gives up their identity, but each recognizes enough of the other's valid human claims that will act differently toward the other. And I think in this situation, as we begin the transition back to an office scenario, that dialogue with managers and direct reports, all of this has to happen. That you have to really listen and try to walk through it, talk through it, even though you may not agree with it. It is, as we're kind of unfolding all of these strategies, we need to hear from each participant and recognize what the others are going through and how we can respond to that. It's not going to be a one size fits all. And that's why communication is crucial and dialogue is crucial during some of these things, during these stages. The stakes are high with this as we begin to transition back. Reality is, this is your moment. I don't care what level you're at, this is your moment. Everyone at this point is responsible for the reset of the department culture. That goes through the dialogue, listening, evaluating, getting creative, innovative, flexibility. Everyone can contribute to the reset of what the culture is going to look like. What you do now determines your leadership path. And that can go either way. If from a director or even in the executive team, what those decisions that are rolled out right now, if we do not listen to the director, our people, if we do not listen to those around us, if we do not have that dialogue, that can impact the leadership response and the leadership path. Also, for those of you who are looking to move forward in the organization and move forward and advance your career, how you respond to a lot of this, how you interact, contributions you make right now are crucial for you. and it's going to kind of set that tone for your career path with this, and a career path that as a whole. The incredible giant work from home experiment that went very seamlessly and very quickly. Yes, we had some challenges. Yes, we had some hurdles to overcome initially, but as a whole, we did a phenomenal job of transitioning to that remote experience. But that will now become an experiment of returning to the office environment. And that's going to be a challenge. Again, it won't be easy. It's not a one size fits all. It's not just going to be, okay, poof, we're back in the office environment. Everything's back to normal. Let's do a reset. No. Again, we're going to have to try to figure out each department culture now and what that will look like for each individual, each department, each leadership. It's going to be a mental move. You're going to have to get in that mindset. Just like we went to the mindset of working from home with the distractions and changing things up, we're going to have to shift back now to this type of environment. Again, who knows longer term what that's look like, shorter term what that looks like, whether some folks start to come back more often, staggered work schedules. We just really don't know all the details right now. And what happens in one department may not be in another department. And we're going to have to realize that. And we're going to have to get that in our mind as far as not everything is going to work the way I want it to work. Not everything is going to be the way that I feel it should be right now. And that goes for all coworkers, supervisors. There's things going back to an office environment. Decisions can maybe be made a little quicker and more cohesively because you have the more communication, the face-to-face. But will that really occur now that we're aware of socially distancing, not, being aware, putting your mask on and going to different offices? A lot of those aspects, we still have to work the kinks out with. Just learn to adjust your expectations when you're returning to the office life. Just as, again, work from home is an adjustment, going back it will be an adjustment as well. And there'll be some periods of time that you're going to have to just take a breath and work through it. It's going to be a challenge to navigate the reverse. Again, go back to those earlier slides. We thought initially when that happened in March, we'd be back by maybe the end of May. We're now in January, and a lot of this is still happening. So it's going to be a bit challenging to navigate that reverse now that we're accustomed to other things. And give yourself and even those around you, some time to readjust back. It's going to, not everybody's going to be in the same boat. Not everybody's going to be in the same situation. And that's where some of that empathy comes in from our leadership, from everyone, from our coworkers, and from our peers. So this is the deal. As we talked about, employees' pandemic era experiences have reshaped the views of the workplace, which is going to have some impact as we're talking about the mental shift back and the way that we transition back and some of the challenges, some of the processes. This is an opportunity to really manage with trust and lead with empathy. We talked about trust earlier. We talked about transparency and empathy. So this is going to be an excellent time at all levels to embrace the blending of our already blended work-life balance. But this is a two-way road. We have to understand that while there's some flexibility, there's been some leniencies, and there will continue to be, COVID-19 is not a free pass. There are still things that have to be accomplished. There are tasks that still have to be done. We get that. But it's not a free pass to blame everything that goes wrong or challenges that we're facing on COVID. It is from managers, we have to be understanding and willing to accommodate without sacrificing integrity or our business needs. Direct reports, we also need to be respectful, mindful of policy, procedure, and expectations. Those things have not changed. Those will continue to be ingrained in our culture. And, we have certain policies and procedures that have to be followed. You have job performance expectations that have to be addressed. But the way that we're doing that may be a little bit different. And that's where the dialogue comes in. That's where the communication comes in. That's where the trust comes in, the transparency that I think we'll have now more than ever before. Because again, at the end of the day, business needs to do what business needs to do. We have to service our students. We have to provide them with the education that they're seeking. We have to service our community. We have to engage with our community. But we also, sometimes business needs might be just to continue being empathetic, but working around some of that, listening to each other, supporting each other, listening to new ideas, having that, well, that might work. I'm not sure about that. Let's try it. Let's just remember to be trustful and empathetic to one another. I would say, and I would especially talking to our managers, when you're monitoring performance metrics, watch with curiosity and learning in mind. And this will really go to faculty as well as you're working with our students. Watch with curiosity and learning in mind, and take a less reactive approach to them than you might in a more stable circumstance. Again, nothing's a one-stop deal. Everything is still in transition. Some, whether it be childcare, dealing with elderly parents, some folks are exposed to COVID and still having to quarantine. Some folks, let's just take a breath on a lot of this and really kind of dig down to why are we here? We're here to do business of the day. And really kind of, what does it look like right now? How can we look at these matrix? How can we look at these job performances, and what learning can we take out of that to influence the future of the organizations? And that's going to be maybe revisiting some key policies and processes that were built for a more stable, certain, predictable, and stable, simple context, and determine whether they need to be adjusted for this more volatile time. There are things that, yes, we cannot get around. As we've already said, there are certain expectations, there's certain policies and procedures, but I think every organization at every level is beginning to evaluate what it takes to really get the job done, and especially in our new culture and climate as a whole that we're working with. Managers and supervisors who seize the opportunity to empower employees, you want to encourage innovation and plant seeds for better ways of working after the immediate crisis has passed. So again, communication, empathy, dialogue. Let's take that. Let's start to empower one another, empower employees, and saying, okay, you've been away from the office, and you probably have some best practices that you can share. You've probably seen some sides that we haven't. Let's talk about that. How can we get around some of these older policies or older procedures, or basically enhance those? Provide less supervision with more coaching. I think this is going to be an excellent time to enhance our coaching skills. I know prior to and throughout the remote work from home initiative, we started talking about the rounding. That can still occur. That can still happen. And I encourage everyone to still have that and use that as that coaching opportunity. But keep in mind that imposing undue restrictions at this time will lead to some resistance and decreased motivation. I am not saying from a manager standpoint that we should relax all of our standards. I am not saying to do away with expectations or those demands that we have to have. What I am saying is evaluate each one independently and have that dialogue and communication of what their immediate needs are to get the job done and what challenges they may be facing. I love this quote that people don't resist change, they resist being changed. And I think that's going to be key for our leadership as we go back into this. And these are some questions and strategies to understand and empathize with our current situation. And we can all ask ourselves this, and this might be something that we can use as a rounding questions with our folks, or a communication in one-on-one with our direct leaders. What are you worried about in this time of transition? What's your biggest worry as we go from this work from home and begin to transition back into a more office environment, campus environment? What are you excited about that provides a little bit of a silver lining? What's the glimmer of hope in all of this transition that we can see that's exciting? what do you need from me right now? Again, that's that transparency and dialogue of just putting it on the table. What do you need from me right now? And be able to solicit specific suggestions from employees on how to adjust ways of working to get through the current challenges. And that ties back to where I'm saying we don't have to necessarily negate or ignore expectations or policies and procedures or demands and what we want from our teams. It's what do you need to get through this? How can we adjust? How can we have some dialogue? How can we get you to that next level based on what you're facing as an individual in all of this? And encourage those around you to experiment with new ways of working, to try something they've always wanted to, and to make adjustments as necessary. This is an ideal time, just those little things that you've always wanted to try, or those little things that you think that might be a better way to accomplish a task or accomplish something in your department meetings. Share that with your leaders, share that with your team. Say, I was thinking about this. Everything is on the table. As I said earlier on, everything is on the table to kind of reevaluate and look at. And this is an excellent time, again, that each one of us is responsible for resetting our department culture. We want to definitely maintain those communication skills. You want to be able to share new routines with your coworkers and supervisors. Those things that were picked up that in the home environment, working from home, some of that can be replicated in the office setting. Make sure that you're sharing those tips and tidbits with your supervisors and your coworkers and your team. Make sure that you're sharing any transferred learned communication skills. A lot of us learned a lot over the last 6 months or so of video conferencing, electronic information, data, how to interpret that, how to pull a lot of that, technology as a whole. Begin to share some of that, of how you do certain things within it. Some of us may be great at WebEx, learned WebEx. Some of us may still kind of newbies to WebEx. Those are type tips that you can share of what you can do within some of that. Communicate open and often. Acknowledge the great things that work from home offered, but be mindful of the new office life gains of what this new experience will take. Again, back to some of that earlier question of what is the silver lining in this? How can we be mindful of what's going to take place with this, and what will this bring that will enhance us moving forward? What I really would stress to everyone is, our work from home initiative offered more personal connection than ever before. I would say continue to build this bridge, continue to build upon this, from supervisors to coworkers to faculty and staff, to faculty and students. Everyone began to know more of have a personal connection, whether we were on a WebEx call, a Zoom call, and somebody's pet entered the picture or their children were playing behind them. We began to kind of have that more personal connection, even though we weren't in an office next to each other. I think we began to really understand what folks were going through. So again, that empathy, continue to build these communication strategies and connection with your teams. Demonstrate care and recognition that supervisors, employees are multidimensional people with interest outside of SLCC. I think, again, as we begin to move into the work from home, we shared the challenges that we had of, I'm really concerned that I have elderly parents in this situation. I'm not able to visit them, or I'm not sure what's going to happen with child care. We began to see that there were things outside of us that offered that personal connection. Again, continue to build on that. Check in on folks. Don't let us transitioning back be the end of that, because that builds our culture as a whole and our connectivity as a team building. Be proactive. Don't wait for others necessarily to come to you. Reach out to somebody if you know that they're struggling or still going through a challenge. Make sure that you're open and honest with them as far as your own personal struggles, and maybe you can help them. What I would say also, as we transition back, watch out for burnout indicators. I know that we had a little odd hours when we were working from home. As far as maybe you got up a little earlier and logged in and then kind of stepped away for just a snack or a bite, or didn't necessarily take actual lunch breaks or breaks. Now that we're coming back into that more structured office, we need to make sure that we plan accordingly for that and make sure that we take time to do that and not getting in the habits that we were maybe at work from home of working a little bit more. Have that definite cutoff time. And that's again, when we worked in our home offices, sometimes we didn't necessarily have a set schedule. But make sure that you're getting back into that routine when you do come to the office. As we talked about, some departments will come back sooner, others not as quickly. Some employees within the same department, this is going to be some flexibility, simply because everybody's situation is different. If you have questions, address the remote versus on-site work requirements with your supervisors and with your team members. Do not dismiss any questions that folks may have, because everything's fluid at this point. We're still trying to figure out what the exact policies will look like and what those requirements will look like based on personal situations in a lot of areas. So, and departmental areas. So just kind of make sure that we're aware of that. Employees at every level should ask these questions. What do I need my boss to understand about my current work situation? This is regardless of where you're at. If you're a faculty, you need to have these conversations with your chairs, with your deans, so forth, and on all the way up to executive level. What do I need my boss to understand about my current work situation? What am I facing? What challenges do I have? What suggestions or ideas do I have to improve performance during this time? Again, brainstorm, get those initiatives out there, be creative. What information do I need to help me focus and prioritize for myself and my team right now? Again, the more information we have, the more transparency, the better off we'll be. What else do I need to be motivated, engaged, productive, and successful during this time? This goes back to being honest and having that communication. If you have questions about, well, why am I coming back into the office where team member X is still working from home, that may impact your motivation and productivity. You need to have that conversation and understand what those situations are. What latitude and autonomy do I have regarding how work is done during this time? Again, have that discussion with your supervisors. What kind of appreciation and or recognition will help me stay motivated and engaged? What do you need from us as supervisors? What do you need from team leaders? What do you need from executive and from all the way up to stay motivated and engaged? And what flexibility might I need to continue contributing during this time? Again, be honest, right now I'm good, but I don't know what's going to happen down the road when the kids go back to school fully, or I don't have childcare, or my parents, or whatever that looks like for you. Put that on the table with your supervisors. Have those open comments and discussions. Have it in your one-on-ones. You should be asking yourself these questions, and managers and directors, you should be having these conversations with your employees. With that, I think we're just finishing up just a little bit early, but I'm going to go back in and see if we can open up the chat room or the mics. See if there's any questions or comments. I think everybody should be unmuted.
Yeah, hey, you hear me? This is Joe. I just wanted to make a comment and just say this was, again, an excellent presentation. I got a lot of value from even the first one you started way back when COVID, we were first being under this circumstance of COVID. But this is an excellent presentation. I just wanted to tell you thank you again.
Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Browning, this is Connor Chabot. Can we get a copy of the PowerPoint if we have other management staff that weren't in this webinar?
Absolutely. We're recording them, and truthfully, I just reached out to Atlanta right before All of the presentations from today, all of the breakout sessions are being recorded, and I'm going to house them on the Center for Professional Development.
Awesome.
So we'll be able to send that out, but also there'll be a link there as well.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Sure. Anybody have any other questions?
Dr. Browning, great job today, my friend, as always. My only question, Dr. Browning, and can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. What would you recommend for a colleague that's on the line who is experiencing the emotions that you talked about today, but they feel slightly hesitant to go talk to their supervisor because they don't want to seem like they're complaining or anything like that? What recommendations would you give to connect them back to their supervisor in a way that doesn't seem like they're complaining, but still will be able to express the feelings and emotions that they're going through?
Sure. Well, I think just having that open dialogue of approaching them, saying, okay, what are the expectations for the future? Where are we? How does that impact me? And these are some of the challenges that I'm experiencing. Can you help me out with some of that? One thing that I would do is, I think some of those questions that I put out there, these are what I'm going through as far as what I need from you. What do I need you to know as my supervisor? It'd be a great opportunity just to take that and say, look, from one of the breakout sessions, these are some questions that I had, and I was encouraged to share them with you and just have that, express that dialogue. And I really think that from what I've seen since we started the work from home, and what I've seen since we had to deal with all of this with the pandemic, is that leadership at all levels are really more concerned, not to say they weren't before, but I think it's been enhanced, are really concerned about their team's well-being. I think that they've had more of a personal connection. They begin to see some of those challenges. They've had to experience it now. The leadership has more connectivity with that as they themselves have gone through it. So I think everyone is really open to this dialogue and communication from what I've seen as a leader.
Thank you.
Do you have any suggestions, Dr. Ford, as a leader? What would you say to your team?
It's a very great question that you pose, because there has to be that kind of transparency. There has to be that being fully engaged. I thought about you recently with the most recent horrific events in Tennessee. And I said, oh my God, I pray Dr. Browning didn't have anyone close to him anywhere near there, but again, it's just making that personal connect. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway that I'm getting from your presentation. Make that personal connect, and don't disconnect just because we are coming back, if you will. I mean, don't lose the momentum that we built. So great job.
Absolutely. And I think just being honest with your supervisor too, of saying, look, I've gotten very comfortable working from home, and these are maybe some habits that I need to break, and I'm going to need your help with that too. But we also have to realize that maybe we got into some bad habits, but just having that transparency is crucial. All right. If there's no other questions, I'm going to give you back a couple of minutes of your time. And I hope everybody has a great day and a great new year.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.